My name's Dan, I hope you're doing really well today. The idea behind this lesson is just to give you a load of ideas, whether you're a beginner, you've just started playing bass, you've been playing for a while and you just want to reach that next level, think you're in a bit of a rut. The advice in this video should help. First thing is to know your fretboard. Now, if you know a few of the notes down here and you're finding yourself a bit restricted, there are a number of things that we can do as bass players to break out of that. So this is kind of what I was playing. The first thing is obviously know your notes, right? I'm just going A, I'm playing it on the 5th fret of the E string, and I'm going to a C on the 3rd fret of the A string. Now, it's an A minor chord, which I'll get to in a minute, but that is a pattern. That's a minor pentatonic scale, and it's a movable shape. That means I can move it to different parts of the bass. So I'm at the 5th fret of the E string. I can take that shape and move it to another A. There's one on the 12th fret of the A string. It's the same note, it's just an octave higher. I can actually do the same thing by finding the next A that's kind of where I am now. And a great pattern for that is an octave pattern. So all you do is you get your A and you go 2 across, you probably know this already, but 2 across and then 2 strings higher. If I go there, I can move this shape and start it now from here. Now, of course, I run out of strings at that point, but it's still the same pattern. So now, I've got all those notes based off knowing one pattern. So that's a really good tip. It's just to move the patterns that you already know around to different parts of the neck. It'll open up the bass register for you. When I was planning this lesson, I spent about 60 seconds composing and writing this bass line. I'm going to play it now, and this is the second point, is to know your most common rhythms that you're going to encounter when you play bass. Usually bass lines are built up of the rhythms that I'm about to play. So I'm just going to play it and just follow along what the different rhythms are. Let me take a quick second to just tell you, I've got a new course called From Beginner to Bassist, and I go through all of these things, these kind of subjects, and a lot more detail. Actually, it starts off beginner, then it goes quite intermediate. Actually, by the end of the course, you're learning how to improvise, you're learning theory, rhythms, fretboard knowledge, a lot more. So if you're interested in that, I'll put a link below. Whole notes you see all the time. 4 beats. So you've got one note, 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you've got a dotted quarter note followed by a 8th note. That happens a lot. Listen to Fleetwood Mac. Loads of Fleetwood Mac bass lines use that rhythm. There's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and so I'm counting. Make sure you count. You need to be really in control of your rhythm. This is your groove, this is where that comes from, your sense of timing. Being absolutely, completely on top of the rhythms. Half notes, again, really important. Now those are 8th notes. When we get to 16ths, which are double that, 8ths are 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and 16ths, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. You can inject a lot more rhythm and a lot more interest into your lines with 16th notes. Now, sometimes, I've shoehorned every single rhythm of the most common ones into this little bass line here, but sometimes you will be called to do just whole notes for a section of a song or for a whole song. And sometimes 16th notes, which require a little bit more technique, but you need to know them all nonetheless. So you learn a few common rhythms. Next thing to do is to get them really, really in time. And a good way to do that is to use a metronome or a drum loop. Now, just a quick word on technique. Basic fingerstyle technique, your left and right hands being coordinated and working together. that needs to be at a certain level before I think you can work on your timing, because if you've got a decent sense of timing but your fingers just aren't quick enough, you're going to stumble regardless of whether you're playing in time or not. The technique is very much linked to how well you're going to be playing in time. So make sure you've got a few exercises. I've got some links below that you can follow, but here is a good metronome exercise. The piece of music that I'm using in this lesson is at 110 beats per minute. So there, just slice that in half, 55 beats per minute. Just put the click on beats 2 and 4. And that's like when you hear a drummer play, the snare drum is the backbeat, and that's on 2 and 4. So that's what I'm sort of simulating by putting the metronome on beats 2 and 4. And I do this kind of thing as much as I can. There's lots of different metronome exercises, by the way, including putting the beat on the click on every beat, but this is a really good one. Just removes a little bit of information. You have to rely on your own inner clock a little bit. At first it's horrible, you can't keep up with it, but you're kind of going 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're forced to count and you're forced to feel the rhythms a bit more. And that's what this is all about. And there I was just making stuff up, I'm just simulating the 2 and 4 there. Just doing that dotted quarter note rhythm there. Sticking with that, you can use existing bass lines. You can make bass lines up, or you can do certain technical exercises. But click on 2 and 4, really good for you. A little more fun sounding is that you can just play along to a drum loop. This one you can download as well. I'll play along to it now and show you. It's pretty obvious when you're playing along to a drum beat, if you can keep up with it or not. You'll feel it and you'll hear it, okay? So working up to this is the idea now. Look, I'm giving you one drum beat for this. You might take something that's a lot slower than this, a different style. You can adapt this to your own way of doing things, but regardless of that, you've got metronome work and you've got drum loops. And if you do that in your practice as much as you can, the sort of main life force of being a bass player, which is your groove, your timing, your feel, you'll be working on those things every day. That's really going to help you. Now, when I was playing in the intro, I was going... I was using expressive techniques. These are your articulations, hammer-ons, pull-offs, bends, slides, ghost notes. All of those techniques, they really take your playing to the next level. It sounds sophisticated, it sounds professional, all these kind of words. And every player, including myself, we have our own way of doing things. You'll have your own way of doing things. You'll favor certain techniques above others, But if I'm just around the 5th fret, I've got... I'm going to get into a little bit of the theory and creating bass lines in a minute, but for now I'm using this shape here, and that's basic finger style. Okay, it just injects flair. There I'm going G to A, 5th fret to 7th fret of the D string. A short note, so I'm controlling the length of the note. It's not really articulations, but it's a note length is a big deal. There's a ghost note. Just holding the string to get a dead percussive sound. There's a hammer on, where you pluck and you hammer down on the next note. That's a nice little thing there. I'm going 5th fret to 4th fret, C to B on the G string, with a pull-off, pluck, and flick the string downwards, you get 2 notes. There's like a hammer on followed by a pull-off. Now I'm really locking in here. In this particular instance, I'm going 16th notes. So I'm tapping my foot. I'm really trying to lock into that grid. And with these ghost notes, there's a bend. Okay, look, just all cool sounding bass playing tends, in my opinion anyway, to have those articulations in them. So you are going to want to learn those. This is a big one. This is music theory. Learn at least some basic music theory. The key of the piece of music, A natural minor. Now that's a scale, just a collection of notes with a certain pattern. If you take, you number those notes 1 to 8, if you take the first, third and fifth, you have what's called a triad. You make bass lines up from that. If you add in a seventh, the seventh note, you have a minor seventh arpeggio. These are chord tones, and you can tell, they sound good. A minor has 7 notes in them, and you could do what I'm doing on each of the 7 notes to get like a harmonized scale. And that really is that's how I wrote this piece. A minor to C, just doing the arpeggio based on that note, the 1, the 3, the 5 that you find there. F major, G major. So you have minor, major triads, there's a few others as well, and they sort of fit to a pattern. And if you learn that pattern, you'll hear music better, you'll write music better, and music will just become easier. By the way, you can also get a chord. If you take, I'll do it higher up, you take the first, the third, or any 3 notes from the scale, which is that. Take 3 of them and play them together at the same time. I'm taking the first, the third, and the 7th. You can come up with nice chordal patterns for bass lines, but also for writing. You don't have to play them all together. It's not a chord then, if you play them separately, but it still sounds good. All I'm doing there is just playing different chords based around the notes from this scale. It fits, it sounds like music. If you understand music theory, this stuff is easy. Here's where we start to get to the really good stuff. So let's say, look, I know I'm going through stuff quickly, but the point here is to give you ideas, to work on for the next few weeks or months or however long it takes you. You get these ideas under your fingers, in your head, and then so you've got a little bit of theory under your fingers, let's just say that. You've learnt some of the rhythms that I was talking about earlier. Well, now you can easily create music. And this is where we get to the good stuff. So look, I've got A minor, playing A, C, back to A. So we can let's take root, 5, octave, and let's put a 7th in there as well. This is the speed, and I've got a bunch of rhythms in my head. So I know that those notes work because those are the notes that make up the chord, okay? My technique is decent enough to hear the thing in my head and be able to play it. I actually did the same thing, just moving to C, and the arpeggio here is a C major 7th, Don't need to use all those notes, but they're there as options. So if I know what notes work, music theory, if I know some good rhythms, if I have a decent sense of rhythm, I can combine these two things. I'm working on my musicality, listening to lots of different bass lines, borrowing ideas here and there. Then you can make up lines very easily. Lots of people don't really know where to practice. Well, hopefully these videos that I do give you some ideas, but what I really want you to do is to learn from music, okay? What I mean by that is just listen. Listen to the music that you love and discover other music too all the time. But just analyze the bass lines. You'll be able to do that by knowing a bit of theory, understanding a few rhythms, like just really, really randomly, one I was listening to yesterday called Just a Man by Faith No More. Okay, it's a really, really cool bass line. Now this is because I'm doing a lesson based around that pattern, which is a sol bass pattern. It's a root note, a fifth, and a sixth. Now, you listen to a few bass lines, light bulb goes off, you see this pattern, you now have that sound lodged in your head forever. Whenever you hear it, you instantly can play it. You realize that it works over all major chords, and then I can hear that it's a major arpeggio. So when I'm learning that bass line, I'm trying my best to learn from it. So I've got the kind of theory knowledge of what I was describing. It's fingerstyle, it's a really cool relaxed rhythm. You know, I'm trying to extract all these different elements from the bass line in order to make other bass lines easier, because you'll hear similarities, in order to kind of steal a few ideas for myself. You know, it works this way. Learn from music. I can't recommend this next tip highly enough, and that is to read and be able to interpret charts. So here are the chords from the piece of music we're working with. We have an A minor, a C, we've got an F major 7 and a G7. So what you do basically is you learn to harmonize a scale. A natural minor is this. So you learn the chord symbols. You don't play chords generally. You play the arpeggios. You learn them once. It takes you however long it takes you. And then whenever you see these symbols, you know that that's where they are. And, you know, you can play them in different parts of the bass. And then it's to do with context. So, you know, we're 110 beats per minute. It's sort of a kind of funky, jazzy, whatever it is, you know, you can adjust. So if it was sort of a rock thing, I'm just following the root notes with eighth notes. That's the rhythm. If I wanted to do something that stuck a bit closer to the kick drum, now, look. Theory. I know that I'm in the key of A minor, so fancy stuff there. That's just all A minor pentatonic, the bass player's secret weapon. I'm just, all those notes just, I know, fit to this. So any fills, I can use that. And otherwise, I'm just going to the chord tones, sometimes just playing roots, fifths, octaves. Really great. Roots, fifths, octaves, very simple notes. If you inject a few rhythms, you know, those articulations I was talking about, you take simple notes and you bring them to life. You see how this is working? Now with charts, you can go into a rehearsal or a gig and literally not know the piece of music, have the chart and just follow it. And all these admittedly funny looking symbols, when you first see them, but after knowing them, you know what they are. You can just look at them, especially great for jazz standards, and you can play the tune without ever having heard it before. And that's the beauty of reading charts. You get to interpret and put your own musicality into it. So I've given you a handful of ideas already. I've got lots of other videos that go into sort of core concepts of bass playing. But ultimately, you need to practice. You need to sort of crystallize a routine with some structure to get these ideas and all the songs that you want to learn and to be able to practice it. So a practice routine is probably the most life-changing thing that you can acquire as a bass player. I sometimes use a journal to jot down ideas and to sort of formulate what I'm practicing, what went well, what needs work. And if you approach your practice with a little bit more of a clear game plan, you'll see the areas that you need to improve in. And you'll kind of, you can write down all the songs that you want to learn and just tackle it bit by bit. And what you'll find is just over time, if you're consistent with it, if you've got all the core concepts that you're learning and you just do a little bit every day, it doesn't have to be hours, could just be 30 minutes every day or two, but be consistent, you'll be amazed at how much better you can get. Last thing for this video that really will take you to the next level, that's playing with other musicians. I've talked about a lot of the nuts and bolts kind of aspects of playing bass. But when you're with other musicians, you have no real time to think about that, especially, when there's a good drummer there. Your job is just to sort of latch on to the rhythm and just to make a good groove that everyone else feels comfortable, playing with. That's your job, and everything else goes out of the window. You certainly have to have decent enough technique to play the bass line, and there's a little bit of added good pressure, and you only get that with playing with other musicians. If you play simple notes with really great tone and taste, really excellent feel and timing, everyone will love your playing. You don't have to be fancy, you don't have to be flashy, you don't have to know a crazy bunch of techniques at all. Your job with the rhythm section is kind of like to make a comfortable chair for the rest of the band to sit in. And actually, what you have to work on are things like timing, get decent tone and make sure you're not digging in too much, get nice, be in control of the bass. That's your technique. If you learn a few of these things and concentrate on simplicity when you play with other musicians, the second best thing to do is just play along with your favorite songs. And that's almost like you're playing with that band. If you can learn to do that, you're going to be really good. So like I say, I go through a lot of this and a lot more in my course, so I'll put that link below. But if you do have any questions, do let me know. Thanks so much for getting to the end. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.